speaker tonight is Wayne Klockner, Executive Director of the American Birding Association. I think it was our mutual friend Mark Garland of Montgomery County originally, and now of Cape May, New Jersey, who recommended that I get Wayne to speak to us, and Wayne has kindly agreed. Thank you, Wayne, for doing this. I've heard great things about Wayne's Warbler talk. Before the ABA, Wayne had a long career in conservation with the Nature Conservancy in Maryland, Delaware, New York, Massachusetts, and Indonesia, fulfilling his dream to protect natural lands and waters for all life. Wayne is a lifelong birder. As a preteen in New Jersey, his spark bird was the dark-eyed junco. He has subsequently pursued birds in 21 countries and counting, but he most enjoys documenting the seasonal changes in regional bird life in patches close to home. Wayne lives in Ocean City, Maryland, with his wife Lisa and a Springer Spaniel named Lizzie. So please make welcome Wayne Klockner.
Thanks so much, Mark. And I hope everybody can hear me clearly. I'm going to send a request to share my screen.
That screen. Press it now. Lower. You do. Okay. You should be able to now.
All right, got it. So I'm privileged to talk to you guys today about one of my favorite times of the year and favorite group of birds, warblers in springtime. This is not going to be a deep dive into the finer points of ID of our New World warblers. The good news is that in spring, warbler ID tends to be mostly a straightforward affair. So, what I want to do with you today, this evening, is just provide perhaps some suggestions about for those of you who are new to birding, how best to get a handle on this diverse and incredibly colorful group of birds. Share some tips about their behavior that might be useful in finding them and identifying them once you find a warbler, and then just a little bit of a cautionary note about avoiding confusion with some look-alike birds that often get misidentified as a warbler. I'm really pleased to have been invited to talk about this at this time of year. We're just on the brink of songbird spring migration. Here in Worcester County, where I live, in West Ocean City, the pine warblers started singing about a week and a half ago. And despite the cold fronts, they're still singing every day. And I expect within the next week to hear my first yellow-throated warbler singing down here. So believe it or not, despite the harsh winter we've had, spring migration is on its way, and it's a great time to get a look at one aspect of spring migration that's always been special to me. So the way I'm going to tackle this this voluminous group of birds, and there are a bunch of species to get through, is sorting them by colors and patterns, shapes and sizes. I'll talk a little bit about behaviors. And I do have songs up here, but I'm not going to have time or the ability to really delve into that, other than to encourage you to break out your Merlin app or listen on the Macaulay Library to warbler songs in advance of spring migration to get tuned up to be able to pick up those songs in the field, know that something really incredible is nearby, and then locate it and get a good look at it. So in terms of color and patterns, I'm going to start with some common features that a number of species of warblers share. And that's a group of warblers that have both wing bars and streaks, usually on the underside. And let's face it, more often than not, you're looking up at these birds, seeing the undersides of them. And I'll try to take that into account as I talk about field marks and start with one of the most common warblers in spring migration, and that's also a breeder here in Maryland, and that's the black and white warbler. The male on the left there is pretty unmistakable. Just a beautifully black and white striped bird, often called the zebra bird or zebra warbler, heavily streaked in black underneath. The female on the right isn't quite as boldly marked. It doesn't have the black mask that the male has, but rather has a whitish face. But the behavior of this bird is very distinctive. It acts like a little nuthatch, creeping along branches and even trunks of trees, looking for small invertebrates and insects in the crevices of the bark of those parts of the tree. They're not like other warblers that are gleaning from leaves of trees or flowers of trees or down in the weeds. They're creeping around like a nuthatch. So if you see a zebra striped bird, small bird acting like a nuthatch, more often than not, it's going to be a black and white warbler. Pretty distinctive bird. Also, a very common migrant in spring in Maryland is the yellow-rumped warbler. It's actually a wintering bird here in Maryland. Down here in Worcester County, it's among the most numerous songbirds that we have in the winter, particularly along the coast on Astig Island and even near the coast. It's not called colloquially butterbutt for no reason. It's got a bright yellow rump. It's got these bold shoulder patches that just become accentuated as both male and female birds molt into spring plumage around this time of year. I've got a slew of these coming to suet and mealworms in my backyard here in West Ocean City, and I'm starting to see signs of molt on some of these birds already. The males on the left, very boldly streaked, black on the back and black underneath, two prominent white wing bars and a really bold black mask that's interrupted with that white supercilium, that white line over the eye, and a little bit of an eye ring underneath, a broken eye ring. And the female on the right is a bit duller with some brownish tones, but still shows the yellow rump, the yellow shoulder patches, and even a hint of that dark face with the pale eye line over the eye. And that, again, is going to be, the yellow rump warbler, again, is going to be one of the most common species that you're going to run into when migration really kicks off in late April and early May. But again, there's a lot of wintering birds still around. I'm sure you're seeing them there in Montgomery County. The other bird that is a year-round resident, at least down here on the shore, is pine warbler. This bird is named pine warbler for a reason. They really do seem to prefer mature evergreen or mixed hardwood evergreen or pine forests. They're a large, deliberate yellowish warbler, olive on the back. The males are bright yellow underneath. I've got one of them coming to the suet right here in the backyard now. They've got a heavier bill than most other warblers, but they share those white wing bars and a little bit of streaking on the flanks. The females can be very dull. Here, let me go back. Female on the right can be quite dull. In fact, the bird on the right in this slide shows a bit of yellow in the face and throat. I've got a female coming to the feeder right now that has no yellow on it whatsoever. It's just pretty monotone gray and maybe a little bit of olive above. But like the males that you see on the left, it's got that heavy bill, heavier than most warbler species, the two white wing bars, a bit of a facial pattern in terms of broken eye ring and a faint supercilium, that line over the eye. The yellow or the gray in the case of the female is broken up by the white undertail coverts. These birds have white undertail coverts. So if you're looking up at them, you'll see that pretty prominently. They're singing now, and as I said, they prefer mixed oak pine or all pine forests by and large. These birds also winter in Maryland, as I said, but migrants are showing up probably now, and certainly the local birds here seem to be setting up territory. Another bird that's going to be arriving in April is the prairie warbler. It superficially looks a little bit like a pine warbler in that it's olive on the back and yellow below, but it has a very distinctive facial pattern with a dark, well, really a black line through the eye and a black crescent under the eye. Heavy black streaks on the flanks, and as I said, olive above, bright yellow below, and not quite as prominent a set of white wing bars as on the previous birds, but the wing bars are there. One thing, I keep going too fast. One thing I'd point out about prairie warbler that can be distinctive is that they can sometimes be prone to pumping their tail. So if you're viewing them in the field and you see a bird that's yellow below with black streaks on the flanks and it's pumping its tail, it's probably a prairie warbler. And the tail pumping is not dissimilar to what you'll see in a palm warbler, which I'll get to a little bit later, or even eastern phoebe, which pumps its tail too. The prairie isn't quite as habitual about it as some, but I have seen that tail pumping frequently in this bird. They typically are found not in mature forests, but they like the edges, the shrubby fields, the second growth. That's where you're most likely to run across prairie warbler. Yellow warbler is a common breeder across Maryland. They pretty much completely leave in the winter. They should start showing up next month. They're appropriately named, just bright yellow below and around the head for the males. The females, that one in the middle, tend to be a little bit duller, but monocolored, other than that chestnut streaking on the chest of the males. So if you see an evenly colored yellow and olive bird with a stark dark eye in the middle of a unmarked face, it's likely to be a yellow warbler. A real clincher, though, is in the tail of either the male or the female. It's the only warbler in North America that has extensive yellow veins on the tail. When the tail is closed, it can appear darkish, like on that bird on the left of this slide. But when the tail is spread, it shows extensive yellow, and that's a real clincher for yellow warbler. These birds like second growth also, and they seem to have a penchant for hanging around near wet areas. It's not a guarantee, but often they like willows, they like shrubby thickets along waterways, around the edges of ponds. We even get them here near the edges of the coastal marshes sometimes. And they'll breed here. Another bird that's a breeder here, and I know you have them along the Potomac River there in Montgomery County. I used to look forward to seeing them when I lived in Bethesda and went birding at Carter Rock and other places along the C&O Canal, is yellow-throated warbler. Down here, I expect to hear my first one in a week or two. It's a really distinctive and lovely bird, just that bright yellow throat that contrasts with that dark mask and the broken white eye ring and the prominent white line over the eye, and even a big white patch sort of where the ear might be. It too has wing bars. It also has black streaks on the flanks, but no other bird quite has the combination of characters, namely that brilliant yellow throat, that dark mask offset by white, and that black streaking on the flanks. And of course, it too has wing bars. It's hard to confuse this with other warblers that regularly occur here in Maryland. This is a bird that down here on the eastern shore loves cypress gum swamps, mature loblolly pine forest, and it's going to be a challenge to see. I know along the Potomac River, there in Montgomery County and farther west, it loves the mature forest along the floodplain there of the river, and is always, whether it's here on the shore or there on the Piedmont or in the Ridge and Valley, up at the very top of the trees. So be prepared to be a little frustrated as you try to get a good look at yellow-throated warbler. They like to stay high for the most part. You might get lucky sometimes, but be prepared to get warbler neck trying to get a look at this one. Blackpoll warbler is going to be a somewhat common migrant later in May. And that's a bird that nests in the far north boreal forest, but migrates through here in some numbers. And the male there on the left, I always like to compare it to a chickadee, even though it's not anywhere near related to a chickadee, other than it's a passerine, a songbird. But it's got that black cap, that prominent white cheek, and a little bit of a black throat, not quite the same as in a chickadee, but it's got black there in the throat that then turns into heavy black flank streaking. Also has wing bars, but it's a pretty distinctive bird if you can get a good look at it, although it too likes to stay up high often. Look for that dark cap, the white cheek, and if you really get lucky and get a close look at this bird, those bright yellow legs. It's a warbler that has among the brightest colored legs of any. The female on the right is quite a bit duller, but still shows signs of the black cap. Not quite as prominent a white cheek. It's going to be a bit duller bird overall. It does share the bright colored legs, the yellow in the legs and feet, and of course the flank streaking and the wing bars. But typically you'll see blackpolls, as I said, up high, although sometimes in migration you'll see them in orchards, you'll see them in second growth, particularly in the morning after they've finished their nighttime migration flights and come down to rest and feed. You'll see the one on the lower right there. That bird is in second growth. And of course, we all hope for looks as good as that one. And I have seen them that way back when I led bird walks up in Massachusetts frequently. Another common spring migrant that shows up in May here in Maryland is magnolia warbler. And a spectacular bird, just brilliant yellow underneath with this thick, heavy black on the throat and flanks, that heavy black streaking. It too has a black mask with a white line over the eye and a big white wing patch instead of often distinct white wing bars. But again, that combination of all yellow underneath, except for the white undertail coverts, that bold black streaking on the flanks, very dark above, the blackish mask with the white eye line and white patch on the wing. It screams magnolia warbler. And for those of you who haven't seen many of these, you're in for a treat. The bird on the right is a female. They don't tend to be as contrasty and as boldly marked as males. The streaking is somewhat reduced, that black streaking on the chest and flanks, but it's there. And the bird even shows some white on the eye line like the male. Just a bit of a duller, a bit grayer above rather than the dark gray and black upper parts of the male magnolia warbler. This is a bird that will often be found high up, but at mid-level in the forest as well, and can be a bird that's fairly easy to get a decent look at as compared to, say, yellow-throated warbler sometimes. So look for them mid-level on up, and oftentimes they like to hang around evergreens, even in migration. Not always, but occasionally, if you're birding in an area that has evergreens, magnolia warbler can be attracted to those spots. They too nest in the boreal forest, although not their range extends farther south than blackpoll. In fact, magnolia warbler is a breeder in Garrett County in Maryland, and they like to hang around hemlocks in mid latitudes at elevation. So you can find this bird in deciduous trees, evergreen trees, mid-level on up. I know I'm going quickly here. We have a lot of warblers to get through, and I'd love to leave time for questions, so forgive me. Another one that a lot of us really enjoy seeing in spring migration is Cape May warbler. Can be a little bit tougher to find, does seem to like to hang around in the upper parts of the trees, which makes it challenging to get a good look at, but is just a lovely bird with those rich yellow underparts, boldly streaked in black, a bit more finely streaked than and more evenly streaked than magnolia warbler. That beautiful chestnut face patch, the white patch on the wing, and the darkish cap. Just a gorgeous bird. The female on the right tends to be quite a bit duller, but look for that very fine dark streaking on the chest. It'll have that white patch on the wing, and both the male and the female Cape May warbler has that yellowish patch behind the face. In the male, it's bold yellow. In the female, it's more of a suggestion, but it's there. And that facial pattern with that yellowish ear patch, if you will, can be pretty distinctive for Cape May warbler. Again, this is a bird that likes to stay up pretty high, generally speaking. It too can sometimes favor evergreens, even in migration. Where it nests predominantly in spruce forest, but can certainly be found in flowering oaks in migration as well as evergreens. So look for that ear patch, that yellowish ear patch on both sexes, and that fine black streaking on the chest. That's not restricted to the flanks like on magnolia warbler. Another bird with wing bars and streaks underneath is the black-throated green warbler. Also a spruce nester, also a bird that nests in small numbers in western Maryland, in hemlocks, and but in migration can be found pretty much anywhere. It tends to like mid-level to upper-level parts of the canopy. Look for that beautiful, rich streaking, black streaking on the flanks and the black throat, that beautiful yellow face patch, and olive on the back, also with the bold white wing bars. Pretty distinctive looking bird if you can get a good look at it. The thing that always stands out for me first is the yellow face contrasting with the black throat. And it tends to sing a lot in migration. I'll touch on birdsong and call a little bit at the end, but finding a lot of these warblers, particularly when they're up in the canopy, songs can really help alert you to what's there and then help you hone in on finding the bird itself. And black-throated green tends to be a real persistent singer in migration. Another great bird to see, they're all great, aren't they, is chestnut-sided warbler. It appears just as it's named this time of year, just that beautiful chestnut streak on either side of the breast and flanks. It's a bird that'll start showing up in May. Very distinctive plumage with not only the chestnut on the sides, but that yellow cap, the dark face, and the white cheek and hind neck. It's got a heavily streaked back, as you can see on the bird on the right. kind of an interesting pattern of sort of pale buff yellow with dark streaks across it. Not shared really with only one other warbler that we'll get to in a moment. The female and the males and females look alike, except that the females are a bit duller. The chestnut flanks might be a bit more restricted or not quite as extensive as in the male. The yellow cap might be a little less well defined, but the overall pattern of the yellow on the top of the head, the black in the face, and the chestnut on the flanks is pretty unmistakable and is shared by both sexes. This is a bird that likes mid-level in the canopy, sometimes even in second growth. I know they nest in Western Maryland in wooded bogs, shrubby bog, and wetland habitats, and you can find them in migration in similar habitat. Bay-breasted warbler is another boreal forest nester that moves through Maryland in May. A gorgeous bird, not quite as brilliantly colored as some, but beautiful in its own right, with that beautiful chestnut color on the top of the head, on the throat and the flanks, beautiful black face that's really sort of offset by that buffy patch behind the face. So call it an ear patch. And that's something that shows up at quite a distance. These birds are often high up in the canopy, and sometimes your first impression is of a dark-headed bird with that beautiful buffy patch on either side of the back of the face. It too, of course, has wing bars. The sexes are quite alike, although the female is going to be much more subdued in her pattern as compared to the male on the left. But they both share that buffy spot, the dark face, and that chestnut bay colored on the throat and flanks. I've seen this bird in deciduous trees and in evergreen trees in migration. It's going to really be honing in where the food is, like so many of these birds do in migration. But given their penchant for nesting in spruce forest up north, you'll often see them in hemlocks and evergreens, including ornamental spruces in migration. A big favorite is the Blackburnian warbler, hard to miss with that spectacular flame-colored throat and face, with that bold black facial marking, that bold white wing patch, and some black streaking on the flanks. It's often described as a bird that just glows when you see it up in a tree. I can certainly attest to that. I never get tired of finding these birds. That I mentioned earlier with chestnut-sided warbler, the back pattern on Blackburnian warbler, you've got a very dark back with these big buffy streaks, quite unlike most other warblers, except for maybe chestnut side. But really what you see most prominently when you first encounter this one is the spectacular orange throat and face and the beautiful black, rich black marks on the head and on the face. It just is a facial pattern, a head pattern that's quite unlike any other warbler out there. If you're lucky enough to see the top of this bird, you'll see the back, you'll see even a bold orange streak that splits the crown of this bird. But more often than not, they're high in trees and you're getting a look at them from underneath. But that orange throat is hard to miss. It's not yellow, it's orange. A bird that's down lower, getting down to our level, but a skulker in the thickets is Canada warbler. We're getting into a group now. We've moved away from the birds with wing bars and streaks, and now we're with a group of warblers that don't have wing bars but can have streaks. And the streaks on Canada warbler is in the form of this beautiful black necklace on the male, there shown on the left. Rich yellow underneath, that bold black necklace, and that beautiful eye ring, and sort of a cold gray above. Very distinctive plumage. The female on the right tends to be duller, as is often the case with these New World warblers, but she still has a hint, even more of than a hint, of that dark necklace, that rich or that prominent eye ring that gives it a really wide-eyed look, and all gray above, no wing bars, no streaks. And again, these are birds that love to hang out in the shrubs, in the thickets. They can be hard to get a look at. They've got a pretty loud song once you learn it, and you'll often hear that first before you ever see one. And then it's a challenge to get a good clear look at one because they're loath to come out of the shrubs. So look for that eye ring and that necklace. Yellow below, dark gray above. Here's a group of warblers with streaks underneath that like to hang around on the ground or along the edges of wetlands and streams. I think many of us are familiar with ovenbirds, common nesters in woodlands across Maryland, a real voice of the forest, the teacher, teacher, teacher song that they sing all summer long. Ovenbird is heavily streaked, is pale below, but heavily streaked. It's got a streaked crown, and if you can get a good look at it, you'll see a dull orange center stripe on the top of its head, prominent white eye ring, and it's walking around like a little thrush on the ground, pumping its tail a little bit. I think they're beautiful. They can be tough to get a look at, but they'll often go up mid-canopy to sing. And a lot of times when you hear that teacher, teacher, teacher song, the bird is singing from an elevated perch, sometimes as high as 20 or 30 feet off the ground. They will sing from the ground, but don't forget to look up sometimes and get a good look at ovenbird that way. Again, white below with heavy dark streaking, beautiful muted olive above, that white eye ring and the streaked crown. And it walks around. Think of it as a little warbler thrush. The other two birds are water thrushes, Louisiana water thrush on the left, northern water thrush on the right here on the slide. And these are birds that, of course, like the water. Louisiana water thrush is a fairly widespread breeder here in Maryland, even down here on the shore. They typically like on the Piedmont and farther west, streams, moving water. Down here on the Eastern Shore, we find them on the edges of swamps, or sometimes in slow-moving waterways through the cypress swamp itself. Northern water thrushes are, by and large, migrants only through Maryland, although they do breed in Garrett County and some of the high-altitude bogs out there on the Allegheny Plateau. And they like, as I said, shrubby bogs out there. But during migration, they can be found anywhere that is wet. And I've heard northern water thrush singing behind my house here in Western Ocean City in some seasonally flooded ponds in the woods here. The way to tell these two apart is northern water thrush has an eye line that gets narrow. It stays roughly the same width, if not gets more narrow behind the eye. Whereas Louisiana water thrush has a bolder, whiter eye line that tends to flare behind the eye. Northern water thrush typically has a throat that is finely streaked, whereas Louisiana water thrush's throat typically is clear and white. Now sometimes northern water thrush can have an unstreaked throat as well. So there are always those vexing exceptions to these rules, but generally speaking, northern water thrush is going to have a finely streaked throat, whereas Louisiana water thrush does not. Northern water thrush is typically has this wonderful yellowish cast across the face, throat, and even to the underparts. Louisiana water thrush is typically whiter below with color on the flanks only, the rear flanks only. That can be helpful in telling them apart. Northern water thrush typically has gray or dark gray legs. Louisiana water thrush often has paler legs, as you can see on these photos. Leg color, soft part color isn't always the best thing to rely on, but in conjunction with these other characters can be a good way to tell the two apart. And finally, they have quite different songs. But again, all ovenbird, northern water thrush, Louisiana water thrush, typically on or close to the ground. And in the case of the water thrushes, they do like to hang around near water. Ovenbird will be back next month here on the Eastern Shore. Louisiana water thrush, same thing. They'll be back in early April. That's probably not dissimilar to what you'd experience there in Montgomery County. Northern water thrush typically is a bit later in April or early May in terms of their arrival to the area. Another bird that some winter here in Maryland and is an early arrival. I expect to see palm warbler in the next 2 or 3 weeks here. Palm warbler, it's that tail wagger that I mentioned when I was talking about the prairie warbler. Palm warbler wags its tail a lot as well. It certainly isn't streaked black like prairie warbler. It can be quite bright yellow underneath, but unlike prairie warbler, it has dull streaks, as you can see in this photo, blurry streaks, if you will, that are typically restricted just to the upper chest and upper flanks. In this time of year, in spring migration, they have a beautiful chestnut cap. Maybe some of them will show dull wing bars, but they're typically on or near the ground, feeding, wagging that tail, and that combination of yellow underparts, sort of brownish olive upper parts, and that chestnut cap make them hard to miss. There are 2 subspecies of palm warblers that move through our area, one of which, the western subspecies, can be quite grayish. Don't think you'd have trouble identifying this time of year when they're in breeding plumage, showing that chestnut cap, that tail wagging behavior, and feeding, as I said, on or near the ground. They will climb up into the mid-level canopy sometimes if the food is there. You will hear them sing at times in migration, but that tail wagging habit is pretty much a giveaway, at least can get you to a couple of options, prairie warbler or palm warbler. And as you can see, this one looks quite different than prairie warbler. It does not have the black flanking streaks. It doesn't have the black pattern on the face. And palm warbler is fairly common. You'll see quite a few of these early on in spring migration. Again, look for that chestnut cap, that wagging tail, hard to miss. Another bird that's hard to miss is black-throated blue warbler. I hesitate to even call these streaks, the black that extends from the throat down onto the flanks, but it can get broken up a little bit and have a streak-like appearance. But boy, it's hard to miss the male with that dark face, the black face really, black throat and the black flanks and that rich blue upper parts. Just a lovely bird. Note in particular in both the male and the female, that little white patch at the base of the primaries. right where it butts up against the primary coverts, those small dark feathers that cover the base of the primaries. That's a real distinctive field mark for black-throated blue warbler, particularly the female on the right, which of course looks nothing like the male, other than that little white patch at the base of the primaries. No other warbler shows quite that same pattern in the wing. The female also has a darkish face that's offset by a broken eye ring underneath the eye, and then that white or pale buff line from the eye to the base of the bill. Otherwise is plainly marked above and below. If you're confronted, the male you should have no trouble with. If you're confronted with a dull-looking olivey bird, look for that facial pattern, and in particular, look for that little whitish spot at the base of the primaries on the outer part of the folded wing. Very distinctive field mark for the bird. These birds are moving through. They do nest in far western Maryland, probably even in the Ridge and Valley as well. Are migrants here for the most part in the Piedmont and the coastal plain, coming through in May. And they can be mid-level to upper-level canopy birds. Many of them are often at a reasonable elevation to get a good look at, as compared to, say, Blackburnian warbler or blackpoll. But look for them in predominantly deciduous forests, mid-level in the canopy. That beautiful blue coloring, the black throat, and that white spot are giveaways. Northern Parula is probably one of our smallest warblers that both nests in parts of Maryland, particularly here on the shore, and is a common migrant as those populations head north to nest in spruce forests in anywhere from coastal Maine and northern New England on up. They do nest down through the Appalachians as well as coastal plain population, as I said, here on the shore on south. It's a very small warbler, beautifully colored gray above with a rich yellow throat and that wonderful chestnut patch on the upper part of the chest and throat that sets off the yellow on the lower part of the chest and the yellow on the throat. The males show that predominantly. Bold white wing bars and broken eye ring. Really small, short-tailed warbler. If you can get a look at the back of the bird, it's going to show an olive patch against the gray upper parts. And that can be a very distinctive feature if you're looking at a bird that's low enough to give you that kind of look. The females are a bit duller. They still have the broken eye ring. They still have the bold white wing bars. They still have yellow on the throat and gray on the upper parts with an olive patch on the back. But the chestnut and dark patch right in the middle of that yellow throat may be quite subdued and even almost absent on some birds. But you're looking at a really small warbler, a short tail with that broken eye ring and those bold white wing bars. You shouldn't have any trouble identifying Northern Parula. They typically are at high up in the canopy. They can be frustrating to get a look at times. But again, in migration, particularly early morning when the birds have just finished their night flight and are hungry, they can appear mid-level in the canopy as well, and you can get pretty decent looks at them. Just a lovely little warbler. Again, that olive patch on the back, that distinctive throat patch with a yellow background, at least on the males, are what to look for, in addition to, in both sexes, that broken eye ring. Another bird that comes through in May is blue-winged warbler, and this bird is pretty hard to miss. Predominantly yellow, kind of like yellow warbler that we reviewed earlier, but you'll never see chestnut streaks on its chest. Unlike yellow warbler, blue-winged warbler has a gray wing with bold white wing bars on it, and it's got a black line through the eye. You remember on yellow warbler, it was a plain yellow face, or olive face, as the case might be if it's a female. But on blue-winged warbler, both sexes, they've got the bold white wing bars and that black line or dark line through the eye, from the bill to the eye, and gives it a very distinctive look in the face when you see it in the field. But it's going to be a predominantly yellow bird with bluish gray wings, big white wing bars, and that distinctive facial pattern. They typically like second growth, so they're not always going to be high up in the trees. They're often going to be mid canopy or lower, because these typically are second growth or early successional breeding birds. Hopefully, if you can find one, you'll be able to get a really good look at it. So again, look for that facial pattern, that dark line through the eye and those bold white wing bars on a gray wing. Its close cousin, or sister species even, is the golden-winged warbler, less common. I know they used to nest in Garrett County. In the rest of the state, they're pretty much migrants, and rare migrants at that, sadly. I love this bird. It's one of my favorites. I can't tell you why. I mean, all the warblers are gorgeous in my view, but there's something about golden-winged warbler where you have a wing bar that's golden instead of white. You've got a bird with a black mask and a black throat and that yellow patch on the crown, that beautiful gray color overall. Just a gorgeously patterned bird. And the females are beautiful in their own right. They don't quite have as bold a facial pattern as the males do. The male on the left here on the slide, the female on the right. But look at that yellow patch in the wing. No other warbler quite has a yellow patch like that offset by a grayish wing. And the female even has a hint of that black mask that the male shows boldly. And it shows yellow on the top of the head like the male does. Just a very distinctive looking bird that in the field, but sadly a declining species, largely as a result of genetic swamping by blue-winged warbler. They do interbreed. You'll often see hybrids. I won't get into the finer points of identifying hybrids tonight. I'm probably taking up too much time as it is, but you may see if you get out in the field in the spring, an all yellow warbler with a black face mask and throat and white wing bars that'll leave you perplexed. And it's a hybrid between blue-winged warbler and golden-winged warbler. And the hybrids of these two species is a whole talk in and of itself. But just be alert to the fact that they do hybridize, and sometimes you'll see birds with characteristics of both blue-winged and golden-winged in the field. Among the most common warblers that we have in Maryland, and they do winter here on the shore. They ought to be showing up in April in numbers, and you can find them just about in any shrubby patch, particularly if there's any moisture nearby, is common yellowthroat. Pretty hard to beat in terms of identification when it comes to the male. You know, the masked bandit look, that black mask offset by white above, white edge, olive above and below, and a beautiful bright yellow throat. The female doesn't quite have that black mask, but always shows a fairly strong contrast between a grayish face or a grayish olive face and a yellowish throat. There's no gradation typically. It's always a fairly strong contrast. No wing bars, no tail spots, no streaks, just an olive bird with a yellowish throat that has a pretty strong contrast with a grayish face when we're talking about the female. The males are pretty unmistakable. And this is, as I said, a common bird across the state, nesting wherever there's any damp and some shrub cover, sedges, cattails. They just love that stuff. A bird that I'm looking forward to getting reacquainted with here on the shore is Prothonotary warbler. And I know they nest along the Potomac River and the C&O Canal as well. They'll start showing up in before too long in April here. This swamp warbler is just, one of the stunners, just a spectacularly bright yellow bird with a bold black bill and eye set in that bright yellow face and head. The back is a duller yellow. The wings are often just a lovely sharp steel gray, as is the tail. White undertail coverts. And by the way, these birds have prominent white spots in the tail. You often see that as they fly across a stream or down the canal or from a nest hole, and a pretty hard bird to mistake. Unlike yellow warbler, Prothonotary warbler has that steel blue gray in the wings and the lower back and the tail. Even the female, the bird shown here on the right on the slide, that's duller than the male on the left, still shows that bluish gray wing, still shows that prominent black eye set in a yellowish face. And unlike yellow warbler, Prothonotary warblers have white under tail coverts. Unlike yellow warbler, Prothonotary warbler has white spots in that gray tail. Remember, yellow warbler has yellow in the tail, not white. This is a bird. The Prothonotary warbler is a loud singer, and when they're on territory singing, they're hard to miss. And as I said, they'll often be at eye level or lower even at times, or at the highest mid-level in the canopy. They nest in dead snags along waterways, ponds, swamps, canals, and that's the habitat they love. They're almost always near water. We're coming in on the home stretch here. No wing bars or streaks, is the group we've been working on here. And another one that sort of reminds me of Prothonotary warbler in one way, given that it's olive above and brilliant yellow below and on the face and has white in the tail, is hooded warbler. But of course, hooded warbler has that spectacular black cowl, that black on the rear part of the head that connects with a black throat behind the eye. Just a spectacular bird that is unlike anything else out there. It's hard to figure what you might confuse the male with, the male on the left. The female can be a bit of a puzzle. She's shown here on the right. She doesn't have that black cowl that the male has, that black hood, if you will. But she'll show suggestions of that on the top of the head sometimes. But look at that bold black eye against a yellow face, that black bill, all yellow underneath, the olive back, and that tail has prominent white spots in it. That could be a great way to distinguish that bird from yellow warbler, as I talked about when I was on the Prothonotary warbler, and to distinguish it also from Wilson's warbler, which is coming up. So again, look for that spectacular, in the male, that spectacular yellow and black head with a prominent dark eye and a yellow face. The female can show a hint of a cap, but look for the white in the tail if you're confused about what you might be looking at. Let me just say for hooded warbler, they're near the ground. They're typically they're in the forest, but typically in shrubby parts of damp forest, floodplain forest here on the Eastern Shore, along the Pocomoke River, for example, in the dense shrubs underneath cypress gum or even loblolly and oaks. They're at eye level or lower typically. Just as this bird, the Kentucky warbler, is. Kentucky warbler is often on or near the ground. They will go up in trees to sing. They too, like hooded warblers, are olive on the back, yellow on the throat, no wing bars or no wing spots, white or yellow. The tail is all dark olive colored. But look for that really prominent facial pattern with the yellow spectacles and that dark through the eye and then down the sides of the face, setting off that brilliant yellow throat. Both sexes look like this. The female might be a little bit duller, but that facial pattern is very distinctive. Kentucky warbler also shows a black forehead that then feathers out into the olive in the back of the head and onto the back. But again, no wing spots, yellow or white, no wing bars, no streaks, just that beautiful olive color, brilliant yellow throat and spectacles with the black mask. It's a bird that typically is on the ground, will go up into the low canopy, eye level to sing, but typically is found on or near the ground, typically in rich woodlands, floodplain woodlands, here on the shore, on the edges of or in shrubby areas of swamp forest. I mentioned Wilson's warbler a moment ago. This is a bird that's a migrant only here in Maryland. They'll be moving through in April or late April and into May. The males are real distinctive. The male on the left there is an olive bird with rich yellow underparts and that beautiful black cap and that singular black eye and a yellow face. Quite unlike anything we've seen so far. The female on the right can be a little trickier to identify. I talked about the black cap and eye on the male. Female typically only has a hint of that black cap, and even then can sometimes be really hard to see. But it's a bird, the female is going to be a pretty evenly colored, bright yellowish olive bird with that prominent dark eye. If you can see a hint of a cap, that's a real tell, but sometimes that can be hard to see. But it's going to be yellow underneath with white under tail coverts. And that becomes important when we talk about a bird that's coming up here in a moment. No wing bars, no spots in the tail, but yellow grading to white underneath the tail and all olive above. These are birds that also like to hang around in shrubby areas and thickets. Can sometimes be tough to get a look at. The males will sing a lot in migration, but they'll skulk around in the shrubs, and you'll have to work a little bit to get a good look at them. Although they'll always be the one that'll pop out and give you a really good look. That's Wilson's warbler. Another common migrant that'll be going through in May is Nashville warbler. These two are olive above, yellow below, but unlike some of the birds we've seen already, they've got a gray cap. The top of their head, their face, the back of the neck is a beautiful, cool gray color that really is set off from the olive back and the yellowish throat and underparts. And they have a prominent white eye ring. The bird, the male on the left, shows a little bit of the chestnut that some of those males can show in the crown. That's usually really hard to see unless you're close and looking down on them, which can be tough to do with Nashville warbler. They like to stay mid-level and higher often, but that grayish head, that grayish cap and face and hind neck with that bold white eye ring, set off by those yellow, bright yellow underparts and olive back distinguishes Nashville warbler. Again, no wing bars, no tail spots. The one mark, the interesting mark that Nashville warbler has in addition to that gray head is if you're looking up at them and you see an all yellow warbler up there with a white belly, a little white patch between the legs, that's Nashville warbler. Think yellow, white, yellow as you go from throat to tail. Not always an easy character to see, but given that Nashville is often high in the trees, it's something to look for. Another skulker down low on the ground in shrubby thickets is a mourning warbler. This is a larger warbler, subtly colored, dark olive above and sort of a bright olive below with a wonderful cool gray hood. Often, and the males have a dark patch on the upper chest, on the edge of that gray hood, and a dark line through the eye. No wing bars, no tail spots, no white on this bird at all. That's the male mourning warbler. The female on the right typically doesn't have that dark line, that black from bill to eye, and it lacks the black patch at the base of the hood on the upper chest, but it'll still show olive on the back, brighter olive underparts, including the undertail coverts, and a grayish hood. This is a bird that is on the larger side, typically is a later migrant, later in May. I've even had birds in Maryland in early June, still migrating through. And as I said, they love dense shrubs, can be a real tough bird to get a good look at. They do nest in Garrett County. I've seen them on territory years ago out there. Same kind of habitat, shrubby, thick stuff in rich woodlands and sometimes on the edge of wetlands. It tends to be it's a loud singer, but it can be a subtle song to pick up when you're in the field. And it's a slow, deliberate warbler. Some of these warblers like Parula warbler or northern parula or chestnut-sided or some of the other streaked warblers I talked about are real active, even frenetic feeders. Birds like these ground-dwelling warblers like water thrushes and ovenbird and mourning warbler and Kentucky warbler, even hooded warbler, they can be slower, more deliberate feeders. And as a consequence, they don't quite catch the eye in the same way and can be a little tougher to find. But as you can see, mourning warbler is a great bird to find anytime. So look for that gray hood and on the males with a black patch on the chest, and on the female, just evenly olive above and brighter below with the gray hood. Tennessee warbler we'll be going through in May. Not a breeder here in Maryland. It's a boreal forest nester. It's one of these warblers that's a little nondescript, but they do have a grayish cap off that contrasts with that olive back, a bit of an eye line and a pale line above the eye. So it's sort of a faint but distinctive facial pattern, and typically largely white underneath. Some birds can show a yellowish cast on the flanks and even on the chest sometimes, but they have bold white undertail coverts. And sad to say, Tennessee warbler loves the very tops of the tallest trees. They sing loudly and often when they're in migration, and often what you'll see of them is what you see in the right-hand photo of this slide. Can be a real tough bird to get a look at from above. They just love to stay high. But again, somewhat nondescript, but a grayish head, an olive back, pale underparts, and white undertail coverts. No wing bars, no tail spots. Orange-crowned warbler is another nondescript bird. It's a rarer spring migrant here. We tend to see more of them in the fall. We even occasionally get them wintering here on the eastern shore. You're going to find a very nondescript, generally olive warbler, no wing bars, no tail spots. Some are yellower underneath than others. Some can be quite gray. They are called orange crown warbler for a reason, although sometimes seeing that orange crown can be a real challenge. Some of them don't have that at all. The females will just have an olive head or a grayish head like the bird on the right. They have a facial pattern that can sort of suggest Tennessee warbler. And look at that bird on the right, sort of a grayish head, yellow or olive underparts with a hint of streaking, very blurry streaking. Some birds don't show much of that at all. And sort of in general could suggest Tennessee warbler, but unlike Tennessee warbler, which has white under the tail, orange crown warbler has yellow or olive under the tail, no white under there at all. And unlike Tennessee warbler, orange crown warbler usually is lower down. I mentioned Tennessee warbler loving the tops of the trees. Orange crown warbler is typically down lower in shrubby thickets, mid canopy, and again is a bit of a rare spring migrant in Maryland, more common in the fall. And this might be the last warbler. It's not the last warbler. It's near the last warbler we're talking about. This is American redstart, a common migrant in the spring, a common nester across much of Maryland, particularly in areas of contiguous mature forest. Here on the shore, they nest in cypress gum swamps. And the male is kind of unmistakable. Black and orange with white on the belly when you see them from below. Beautiful orange markings on the wing and at the base of the tail. In fact, American redstart is the only warbler that has a black or blackish tip to the tail and a orange or yellowish base. No white, but dark tip and a colored base to the tail. And often you see them from below, although this bird will forage mid-level on up. Unlike the male, the female on the right isn't quite as boldly marked. It's typically gray or olive gray, but like the male, shows prominent yellow markings in the wing and at the base of either side of the tail. She has a little bit of color on the shoulder, not the brilliant orange that the male has, but distinctive nonetheless. And this is a bird that through behavior alone is often easy to identify, even the female. They typically fan their tails like the one on the right. They're very active feeders, often gleaning while in flight, fanning that tail, flashing the orange or yellow in the tail. Just a wonderfully active bird that is hard to miss when they're around. That's American redstart. Another ground bird, another ground dwelling warbler. I know they nest in parts of Montgomery County. They nest here on the shore as well as worm-eating warbler. As you can see, it's not a spectacularly marked warbler, but I think it's beautifully subtle. That rich sort of buffy olive throat and underparts, olive back, and then those wonderful dark stripes on the head. Both sexes look alike. They tend to be heavy-billed birds. No white, no wing bars, no streaks other than those 4 streaks on the head, 1 through each eye and then 2 on either side of the crown. And This is a bird that's a ground nester, loves hillsides here on the shore where there aren't hillsides. It loves shrubby thickets under largely mature forest, and is one of these beautifully understated warblers that can be tough to get a look at, but is not as is more common than a lot of people realize. But its habits and its coloration kind of make it a little bit tough to notice at times. But no other warbler has head streaks like that against a largely uniformly colored back and underparts. So look for those head streaks and that beautiful warm buffy olive color underneath. And finally, there's Swainson's warbler. Used to be a breeder here on the shore. Birds continue to show up, singing males continue to show up in April, even in places farther north than Maryland. There is a nesting population in the southern Alleghenies and West Virginia, and on down into Georgia. So I put it here not because it's a bird you're likely to encounter. It'll be a red letter day if you find a Swainson's warbler, but it's a bird I hope to find here in Worcester County one day. So I'm including it in this presentation. Largely brownish above, even tending to olive on some birds, a pale buff below, a bit of an eye line, a large billed bird, ground dwelling, and they typically are found in shrubby, damp areas. Farther south, they love cane stands, native cane, a tall native grass, but who knows? There's probably even a Montgomery County record of Swainson's warbler. I meant to look that up, but I didn't. But I wouldn't be a bit surprised if, as seems to be the case, every few years, one of these birds doesn't show up singing somewhere and hanging around for 3 or 4 days, giving people a look at what otherwise would be a bird you'd have to travel south of the Chesapeake Bay to get a look at. I'm going to finish with just a caution about some lookalikes. We've got red-eyed vireo here on the left and warbling vireo here on the right. They superficially look like, say Tennessee warbler or orange crown warbler, or maybe a dull female yellowthroat, but vireos have heavier bills. They tend to be more deliberate feeders. They're not quite as active when they're gleaning insects or picking off insects from trees or twigs. They're larger typically than most of the warblers that are migrating through in the spring. So just be careful when you see one of these birds that is pretty evenly colored, one of these more generic looking gray or olive birds. Look closely at bill size, at behavior, check your field guides and review the vireos, because often you might be looking at a vireo rather than a warbler. And the same goes for a bird that's smaller than just about any warbler we have, ruby crown kinglet, and they'll be going through in numbers pretty soon in April here and on into May. They certainly superficially look like a warbler, but unlike any warbler, they're really tiny. They've got an eye ring, but it's a broken eye ring, not above and below, but in front and behind the eye. That's really different. And then that wing pattern, they do have a wing bar, but it's typically a pale patch right next to a black patch on the wing. It's just different looking than most of the wing bars on the warblers we reviewed already. They tend, as I said, to be, they too are very active feeders, frequently hovering, picking things off of the end of twigs, really hard to get a look at because they always seem to be in motion and really tiny. So just be on the lookout as you find a bird, a small olive-colored bird like this, not to mistake a ruby-crowned kinglet for a warbler. And that's it, folks. I really appreciate your patience with me. I recommend a couple of resources. There's a Peterson Field Guide series book called Warblers by John Dunn and Kimball Garrett. It came out in the late 70s, or 90s rather, and as a consequence could be considered dated, but it is a wonderful resource if you're interested in New World warblers. All great photographs, great illustrations, exhaustive text about the habits of these birds, their songs, and of course, how to ID them. And there's another a great guide by Tom Stevenson and Scott Whittle called the Warbler Guide, and I have the website address there. You can also download the Warbler Guide as an app onto your Android or Apple phones. And I have it on mine and often refer to it. And that's a great resource to help you sort out these birds that I can't recommend highly enough. So thank you so much again for your patience. I hope this has got you jazzed for spring migration. There's a lot to learn about these birds. I mentioned song. Song is really helpful in figuring out that there's a warbler up in the top of that oak tree that you might want to try to get a look at. But learning the songs is a whole nother adventure ahead for you. And I would start with Merlin as a resource to help you begin to get acquainted with warbler songs, and at the same time caution you that Merlin isn't infallible and often will make mistakes. So just be cautious, be adventurous, and nothing beats getting out in the field and finding and watching these birds to get to know them better. So thank you. And I apologize for going longer than probably most people anticipated. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Well, Wayne, as regards Swainson's warbler, there was a probable breeding pair at Little Bennett Park last summer.
Yeah, I think I remember reading about that one in eBird Alerts. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I would, I've seen a lot of Swainson's warblers in Virginia and in North Carolina. I've never seen one in Maryland, so I'm really hot to find one here in my home county of Worcester. We'll see.
Mhm.
Any questions from the audience for Wayne? Yes.
I was just wondering if there's a mention of a cerulean warbler.
I'm sorry, which one?
Cerulean warbler.
Yeah, you know what? I left that out, didn't I? And that's a bird I used to look for on the C&O Canal all the time. And you know what? You're not the first person to point out that I've forgotten to add that bird in the list. Now I'm really chagrined with myself. All I can tell you folks now is open your field guides and look at cerulean warbler, because that is a bird that nests along the Potomac River and farther west. I used to look forward to seeing them every year and be prepared to look for them in the very tops of the tallest trees.
Your shirt has some of the cerulean warbler blue.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I apologize for leaving that one out. And you know what? I should add it right now while I've been reminded for the second or third time.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
Can't believe I forgot that one again.
Anyway, thanks very much, Wayne. We enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sure. I hope it's been useful and good birding, folks.
It whets our appetite.
Good. See ya.
We will see you.
Thank you.